We are continuing to read in 1 Samuel. Today is chapters 11 through 15. I am reading out of the Interlinear Bible, which is the Hebrew and the Aramaic translation of 1 Samuel, the Old Testament. Chapter 11. And Nahash the Ammonite went up and camped against Jabesh Gilead. Anab and all the men of Jabesh said to Nahash, "Cut a covenant for us, and we will serve you." And Nahash the Ammonite said to them, "With this I will cut a covenant for you, when all the right eye is dug out for you, and I will make it a reproach on all Israel." And the elders of Jabesh said to him, "Slack off from us 7 days, and we will send messengers in all the boundary of Israel. And if there is no deliverer for us, then we will come out to you." And the messengers came to Gibeah of Saul, and they spoke the words in the ears of the people. And all the people lifted up their voice and wept. And behold, Saul came behind the oxen from the field. And Saul said, "What is it to the people that they weep?" And they related to him the words of the men of Jabesh. And the Spirit of God came powerfully on Saul when he heard these words, and his anger glowed greatly. And he took the team of oxen and cut them in pieces, and he sent them into all the boundary of Israel by the hand of the messengers, saying, "Whoever does not come out after Saul and after Samuel, so it shall be done to his oxen." And the fear of Jehovah fell on the people, and they came out as one man, and he mustered them in Bezek. And the sons of Israel were 300,000, and the men of Judah 30,000. And they said to the messengers who came, "So you shall say to the men of Jabesh Gilead, Tomorrow there shall be deliverance for you in the heat of the sun." And the messengers came and related this to the men of Jabesh, and they rejoiced. And it happened on the next day, Saul put the people in 3 companies, and they came in the midst of the camp in the morning watch. And they struck Ammon until the heat of the day. And it happened, the ones left were scattered, not even 2 among them were left together. And the people said to Samuel, "Who is he saying, shall Saul reign over us? Give the men, and we will put them to death." And Saul said, "Not a man shall be put to death on this day, for today Jehovah worked deliverance in Israel." And Samuel said to the people, "Come and let us go to Gilgal and renew the kingdom there." And all the people went to Gilgal and made Saul to reign there in Gilgal before the face of Jehovah. And they sacrificed sacrifices of peace offerings there before Jehovah. And Saul and all the men of Israel greatly rejoiced there. Chapter 12 of 1 Samuel. And Samuel said to all Israel, "Behold, I have heard your voice, to all that you said to me, and I made a king to reign over you. And now behold, the king is walking before you, but I am old and gray. And behold, my sons, they are with you, and I have walked before your face from my youth until this day. Behold me, testify against me before Jehovah and before his anointed. Whose ox have I taken, and whose ass have I taken, and whom have I offended? Whom have I abused, and from whose hand have I taken a bribe, that I might hide my eyes with it, and I will give back to you?" And they said, "You have not oppressed us, and you have not abused us, you have not taken from the hand of any man." And he said to them, "Jehovah is witness against you, and his anointed is witness this day, that you have not found anything in my hand." And they said, "He is witness." And Samuel said to the people, "It is Jehovah who made Moses and Aaron, and who caused your fathers to go up from the land of Egypt. And now stand, and I will contend with you before the face of Jehovah regarding all the righteous acts of Jehovah, which he did with you and with your fathers, when Jacob came into Egypt, and your fathers cried to Jehovah. Then Jehovah sent Moses and Aaron, and they brought your fathers out from Egypt and settled them in this place. And they forgot Jehovah their God, and he sold them into the hand of Sisera, commander of the army of Hazar, and into the hand of the Philistines, and into the hand of the king of Moab. And they fought against them, and they cried to Jehovah and said, We have sinned, for we forsook Jehovah, and served the Baals and the Ashtaroth. But now deliver us from the hand of our enemies, and we will serve you. And Jehovah sent Jerubbaal and Bedin and Jephthah and Samuel, and delivered you from the hand of your enemies from all around, and you lived securely. And you saw that Nahash, the king of the sons of Ammon, came against you. And you said to me, No, for a king shall reign over us, even though Jehovah your God was king over you. And behold, now the king whom you choose, whom you requested. And behold, Jehovah gave a king over you. If you will fear Jehovah and serve him, and listen to his voice, and do not rebel against the mouth of Jehovah, then you, both you, and also the king who reigns over you, shall follow Jehovah your God. But if you will not listen to the voice of Jehovah, and you rebel against the mouth of Jehovah, then the hand of Jehovah shall be against you, and against your fathers. Also now present yourselves, and see this great thing that Jehovah will do before your eyes. Is it not wheat harvest today? I will call to Jehovah, and he will give sounds and rain. And know and see that your evil is great, that which you have done in the eyes of Jehovah, to ask a king for yourselves. And Samuel called to Jehovah, and Jehovah gave sounds and rain in that day. And all the people greatly feared Jehovah and Samuel. And all the people said to Samuel, Pray to Jehovah your God for your servants, and not we will die. For we have added this evil to all our sins, to ask a king for ourselves. And Samuel said to the people, Do not fear. You have done all this evil, only do not turn aside from following Jehovah, and serve Jehovah with all your heart. And do not turn aside to go after worthless things, which do not profit and do not deliver, for they are worthless. For Jehovah will not abandon his people for the sake of his great name. For Jehovah undertakes to make you a people for himself. Also far be it from me from sinning against Jehovah, from ceasing to pray for you, but I will instruct you in the good and the right way. Only fear Jehovah and serve him in truth with all your heart, for see that he has done great things for you. But if evil breaks in pieces his word, both you and your king will be swept away. Chapter 13 of 1 Samuel. It was 1 year since Saul became king. Then he reigned 2 more years over Israel, and Saul chose for himself 3,000 out of Israel, and 2,000 were with Saul in Michmash, and in the hills of Bethel, and 1,000 with Jonathan in Gibeah of Benjamin. And he sent the rest of the people each to his tent. And Jonathan struck the fort of the Philistines that was in Geba. And the Philistines heard, and Saul blew with the ram's horn throughout all the land, saying, Let the Hebrews hear. And all Israel heard, saying, Saul has struck a fort of the Philistines, and also Israel has made himself stink to the Philistines. And all the people were called after Saul to Gilgal, and the Philistines gathered to fight with Israel with 30,000 chariots and 6,000 horsemen, and people as the sand which is on the lip of the sea for multitude. And they came up and pitched in Michmash, east of Beth-aven. And the men of Israel saw that they were in a strait, for the people were distressed. And the people hid themselves in caves, and in crevices, and in crags, and in tombs, and in cisterns. And the Hebrews crossed over the Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead, and Saul was still in Gilgal. And all the people followed him trembling. And he waited 7 days, according to the set time with Samuel. But Samuel had not come to Gilgal, and the people were scattered from him. And Saul said, Bring near to me the burnt offerings and the peace offerings. And he offered up the burnt offerings, and it happened, as soon as he finished the burnt offering, behold, Samuel came. And Saul went out to meet him, and to bless him. And Saul said, Because I saw that the people were scattering from me, and you did not come in the days set out, and the Philistines were gathering at Michmash. Then I said, Now the Philistines will come down to me to Gilgal, and I have not sweetened the face of Jehovah. And I forced myself, and I offered a burnt offering. And Samuel said to Saul, You have acted foolishly, that you have not kept the command of Jehovah your God, which he commanded you. For now Jehovah would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now your kingdom shall not stand. Jehovah has sought out for himself a man according to his own heart, and Jehovah has appointed him a leader over his people. For you have not kept that which Jehovah commanded you. And Samuel rose up and went up from Gilgal to Gibeah of Benjamin. And Saul numbered the people who were found with him, about 600 men. And Saul and his son Jonathan and the people who were found with them were staying in Gibeah of Benjamin. And the Philistines pitched in Michmash. And the spoilers came out of the Philistines' camp in 3 companies. 1 company turned to the way of Ophrah, and to the land of Shual. And the other company turned the way to Beth-horon, and another company turned to the way of the border looking down on the valley of Zeboim, toward the wilderness. There was no smith found throughout all the land of Israel. For the Philistines said, Lest the Hebrews make the swords or spears. And all Israel went down to the Philistines, each man to sharpen his plowshare, and his mattock, and his axe, and his plowshare. And the sharpening change or charge was a pim for the plowshares, and for the mattocks, and for 3-pronged forks, and for axes, and for setting the plowshares. And it happened in the day of battle, that there was neither sword nor spear in the hand of any of the people with Saul and Jonathan. But one was found with Saul and with his son Jonathan. And the fort of the Philistines went out to the pass of Michmash. Chapter 14. And the day came that Jonathan the son of Saul said to the young man bearing his armor, Come, and we will go over to the fort of the Philistines on the other side. But he did not tell his father. And Saul was waiting at the edge of Gibeah, under the pomegranate in Migron, also the people with him, about 600 men. And Ahijah, the son of Ahitub, the son of Ichabod, the son of Phinehas, the son of Eli, and the priest of Jehovah in Shiloh, was wearing the ephod, and the people did not know that Jonathan had left. And between the passes by which Jonathan sought to go over to the Philistines' fort, there was a rocky crag on the one side, and a rocky crag on the other side. And the name of the one was Bozez, and the name of the other Seneh. The one crag was on the north, in front of Michmash, and the other on the south, in front of Gibeah. And Jonathan said to the young man bearing his weapons, Come, and we shall cross over to the fort of these uncircumcised ones. It may be Jehovah will work for us, for there is no hindrance to Jehovah, to save by many or by few. And his armor-bearer said to him, Do all that is in your heart. Turn yourself. Behold, I am with you according to your heart. And Jonathan said, Behold, we will cross over to the men, and show ourselves to them. If they say, This to us, stand still until we reach you, then we will stand in our place, and not go up to them. But if they say this, Come up to us, then we will go up, for Jehovah has given them into our hand. And this will be a sign for us. And both of them were revealed to the fort of the Philistines. And the Philistines said, See, Hebrews coming out from the holes there, where they hid themselves. And the men of the fort answered Jonathan and his armor-bearer, and said, Come up to us, and we will teach you a thing. And Jonathan said to his armor-bearer, come up after me, for Jehovah has given them into the hand of Israel. And Jonathan went up on his hand and on his feet, and the armor bearer after him. And they fell before Jonathan, and the armor bearer killed after him. And this was the first blow, when Jonathan and his armor bearer struck about 20 men in about half a furrow of an acre of a field. And there was trembling in the camp in the field, and among all the people. The fort and the spoilers trembled, even them, and the ground quaked, and it was for a trembling of God. And the watchmen of Saul in Gibeah of Benjamin looked, and behold, the multitude had melted away, and they went, even here and there. And Saul said to the people who were with him, Make account now, and see who is gone from us. And they counted, and behold, Jonathan and the armor bearer were not there. And Saul said to Ajay, Bring the ark of God here. For the ark of God was with the sons of Israel on that day. And it happened when Saul spoke to the priest, the noise which was in the camp of the Philistines went on, going on and increasing. And Saul said to the priest, Withdraw your hand. And Saul and all the people with him gathered together and went to the battle. And behold, every man's sword was against his fellow, a very great panic. Then the Hebrews who were for the Philistines before, who had gone with them to the camp, turned around, even they, to be with Israel, that was with Saul and Jonathan. And all the men of Israel who had been hiding themselves in the hills of Ephraim heard that the Philistines had fled. And they also pursued them in battle. And Jehovah saved Israel that day. And the battle passed over to Bethaven. And the men of Israel were distressed on that day, for Saul took an oath of the people, saying, Cursed shall be the man who eats food until the evening, when I have been avenged on my foes. And none of the people tasted food. And all those of the land came into a forest, and there was honey on the ground. And the people came into the forest, and behold, a flow of honey. But no man put his hand out to his mouth, for the people feared the oath. And Jonathan did not hear when his father made the people swear. And he put out the tip of the staff in his hand, and dipped it into the honeycomb. And he put his hand to his mouth, and his eyes brightened. And one of the people answered and said, Your father certainly took an oath of the people, saying, Cursed shall be the man who eats food today. And the people were weak. And Jonathan said, My father has troubled the land. See now that my eyes become bright, for I tasted this little honey. How much more if the people had eaten well today of the spoil of its enemies which it has found? For now the blow among the Philistines has not been great. And they struck the Philistines on that day from Michmash to Ajalon. And the people were very weak. And the people fell on the spoil, and took sheep, and oxen, and sons of the herd, and slaughtered them to the ground. And the people ate with the blood. And they told Saul, saying, Behold, the people are sinning against Jehovah, to eat with the blood. And he said, You have acted treacherously. Now roll me a great stone today. And Saul said, Disperse yourselves among the people, and say to them, Each one bring his ox near to me, and each his sheep. And you shall kill them in this place, and eat. And you shall not sin against Jehovah, to eat with the blood. And to all the people each brought near his ox and in his hand that night. And Saul built an altar to Jehovah. With it he began to build an altar to Jehovah. And Saul said, Let us go down after the Philistines by night, and we shall plunder them until morning light, and do not leave a man of them. And they said, Do all that is good in your eyes. And the priest said, Let us draw near here to God. And Saul asked of God, Shall I go down after the Philistines? Will you give them into the hand of Israel? But he did not answer him on that day. And Saul said, All of you leaders of the people, draw near here, and know and see, in what way this sin happened today. For as Jehovah lives, who delivers Israel, surely, if it is my son Jonathan, he shall certainly die. And no one answered him from all the people. And he said to all Israel, You be on one side, and my son Jonathan and I be on the other side. And the people said to Saul, Do that which is good in your eyes. And Saul said to Jehovah, The God of Israel, give a perfect lot. And Jonathan and Saul were taken, and the people went out. And Saul said, Cast between me and my son Jonathan. And Jonathan were taken. And Saul said to Jonathan, Tell me, what did you do? And Jonathan told him and said, I indeed tasted a little honey with the end of the staff in my hand. Behold, I am here, I will die. And Saul said, God, do so, and more also, for you shall surely die, Jonathan. And the people said to Saul, Shall Jonathan die, he who did this great deliverance in Israel? Far be it! As Jehovah lives, there shall not one hair on his head fall to the ground, for he has worked with God this day. And the people rescued Jonathan, and did not die. And Saul went up from following the Philistines, and the Philistines went to their own place. And Saul took the kingdom over Israel, and fought against all his enemies all around, with Moab, and with the sons of Ammon, and with Edom, and with the kings of Zobah, and with the Philistines, and wherever he turned, he put them the worse. And he did valiantly, and struck Amalek, and delivered Israel from the hand of their plunderers. And Saul's sons were Jonathan, and Ishvi, and Malchishua, and his daughters' names. The firstborn name was Merab, and the name of the younger, Michal. Or I want to say Michelle, but it's Michal. And the name of Saul's wife was Abinoam, the daughter of Ahimaaz. And the name of his army commander was Abner, the son of Ner, Saul's uncle. And Kish was Saul's father. Ner, Abner's father, was the son of Abiel. And the war was strong against the Philistines all the days of Saul. And when Saul saw any mighty man, or any brave man, then he gathered him to himself. Chapter 15 of 1 Samuel. And Samuel said to Saul, Jehovah sent me to anoint you king over his people, over Israel. And now listen to the voice of the words of Jehovah. So says Jehovah of hosts, I will visit Amalek with what he did to Israel, how he set himself against him in the way when he came up from Egypt. Now go, and you shall strike Amalek, and destroy all that he has. And you shall have no pity on him, and you shall put to death all from man to woman, from little one to suckling, from ox to sheep, from camel to ass. And Saul heard and mustered the people in Telaim, 200,000 footmen, and 10,000 were men of Judah. And Saul came to a city of Amalek, and lay in wait in a torrent bed. And Saul said to the Kenite, Go, depart, go out from the midst of Amalek, lest I take away you with him. For you acted with kindness toward all the sons of Israel when they came up out of Egypt. And the Kenite departed from the midst of Amalek. And Saul struck Amalek from Havilah, as you go to Shur, which is before Egypt. And he captured Agag, the king of Amalek, alive. But he exterminated all the people with the mouth of the sword. And Saul and the people had pity on Agag, and on the best of the flock, and of the herd, and the seconds, and the lambs, and all that was good, and were not willing to exterminate them. But everything that was of no account and feeble they exterminated. And the word of Jehovah came to Samuel, saying, I repent that I made Saul reign as king, for he has turned back from following me, and he has not risen to do my words. And Samuel was angry, and he cried to Jehovah all night. And Samuel rose early to meet Saul in the morning. And it was told to Samuel, saying, Saul is come to Carmel, and behold, he has set up a monument to himself, and has gone around, and has passed over and gone down to Gilgal. And Samuel came to Saul. And Saul said to him, Blessed are you of Jehovah. I have risen to do the word of Jehovah. And Samuel said, What then is this bleating of the flock in my ears, and the sound of the herd that I hear? And Saul said, They have brought them from Amalek, because the people had pity on the best of the flock and of the herd, in order to sacrifice to Jehovah your God. And the rest we have exterminated. And Samuel said to Saul, Stop, and I will declare to you that which Jehovah spoke to me tonight. And he said to him, Speak. And Samuel said, Were you not even you little in your own eyes before becoming leader of the tribes of Israel? And Jehovah anointed you as king over Israel. And Jehovah sent you on the way and said, Go and exterminate the sinners, Amalek, and fight against them until they finish them. Then why did you not listen to the voice of Jehovah? Yes, you flew on the spoil and did evil in the eyes of Jehovah. And Saul said to Samuel, I did obey the voice of Jehovah, and I went in the way which Jehovah sent me, and brought Agag the king of Amalek, and I exterminated Amalek. And the people took from the spoil of the flock, and the first of the herd, that devoted to sacrifice to Jehovah your God in Gilgal. And Samuel said, Does Jehovah delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices, as in obeying the voice of Jehovah? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice. To give attention is better than the fat of rams, for the sin of divination is rebellion. Insolence is both iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of Jehovah, so he has rejected you from being king. And Saul said to Samuel, I have sinned, for I have transgressed the mouth of Jehovah and your word, because I feared the people and I listened to their voice. And now, please, pardon my sin and return with me, and I shall worship Jehovah. But Samuel said to Saul, I will not return with you, for you have rejected the word of Jehovah, and Jehovah has rejected you from being king over Israel. And Samuel turned around to go, and he took hold on the skirt of his robe, and it was torn. And Samuel said to him, Jehovah has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today, and has given it to your neighbor, who is better than you. And also the glory of Israel will not lie nor repent, for he is not a man that he should repent. And he said, I have sinned. Honor me now, I beg you, before the elders of my people, and before Israel, and return with me, and I shall worship Jehovah your God. And Samuel turned back after Saul, and Saul worshipped Jehovah. And Samuel said, Bring near to me Agag the king of Amalek. And Agag came to him cheerfully. And Agag said, Surely the bitterness of death has passed. And Samuel said, As your sword has bereaved women of children, so shall your mother be bereft among women. And Samuel cut Agag in pieces before Jehovah in Gilgal. And Samuel went to Ramah, and Saul went to his house, to Gibeah of Saul. And Samuel never again saw Saul until the day of his death, for Samuel mourned for Saul, and Jehovah repented that he had caused Saul to reign over Israel.